Well, I'm not going to be here next time. I'll be in Phoenix.
No, you want to cancel next week's show?
It's up to you.
Nelson, you want to have one anyway?
Nope. Not unless he wants to do it from remote. We could all meet here and keep his momentum. And he'd have to be remote with his computer, and we would just be.
We'll ask him to drop next week.
Yeah. There's your Sabbath. Is this a formal meeting? Somebody got to gavel and come to order? Or no?
Well, we don't have even the camp orders tonight. Yeah, we don't have anything. It's just off night. We forgot. Well, I'm not gonna bring it up because I don't want to get anyone upset. We'll do it right now. We make the best we can do with what we have.
I want you to listen to what Macy's recording.
You got to sign up tonight. We got people. I can put this many people underneath you. You got to make it. People are going crazy. The room's packed, and there's testimony.
Excitement
It's
is
changing lives. It's changing.
It's changing diapers.
Yeah.
It's changing. I have to find a tire pressure gauge in my car.
Oh, well,
35 pounds.
That was much for that tire, 35 pounds.
that's what I aired it up to.
That's what it's at.
Good.
Okay.
That's what I aired it up to, so it hasn't leaked down at all.
Most tires are 32 to 35.
Yeah.
Well, I overinflate them a little bit.
You do more in the summertime. You know that?
You do more in the wintertime because it gets cold and you got to put a little extra in there.
Okay. I've heard this summer for the expansion.
No,
You got to.
you don't need as much in the summer. It'll overinflate more.
What do you put, about 32 in the summer and 35 in the winter?
You're better off checking it from time to time and keeping it about 32.
Most cars, the older ones, don't have those tire pressure sensors in them.
That one that Toyota I drive, it's off.
I started the white car. It started.
Good.
So Randy's coming back and he's going to check it, and I'm going to see what I can do with it. I'll either keep it or sell it or something.
You just have one car at the house?
Well, yeah, I got to have more than one car because you never know when one is not going to work. But
I only have one car.
I only have one car. You got two cars.
you
One of them
guys
don't run.
every time I turn around, you guys are renting another car.
Actually, I have two cars, but one don't work.
No, you got you got two cars.
I'm going to get that transmission fixed eventually on that Lexus.
What year was that Lexus?
I think it's 2001.
Why did you hit training cars?
Transmission?
Yeah. Did it wear out? How many miles are on it?
It's got a lot of miles.
Okay.
Just driving
that
that
baby
baby.
out.
I used to drive 200 miles a day.
Right.
It left me in just outside Jacksboro. It conked out.
You died?
Yeah, I had to push that thing on a Saturday morning. It was Friday night. I had to push it and found a hotel room.
Wow.
And then I
Pushed
called.
it by hand?
Yeah, and I was in there. I'm over the country road,
Yeah, right.
so I'm kind of getting the
Yeah,
wheel
right.
set up, pushing some more.
Yeah, right.
Because nobody was really open that hour. Who it'd be real high to call a record.
Oh, yeah.
In wee hours of the morning. So I went and got somebody at 7 a.m. It was like $208 to tow it from Jacksboro to Fort Worth. $208.
I got to get AAA or something similar to that because I do not want. If anything goes wrong, I don't want to be stuck up nowhere.
And also, you're gonna call the presentation for the
Getting
guests.
to order?
You've got 4. They're currently.
Yeah, there was 6 too. How come?
We better get going before they drop off.
Okay, so welcome everybody on YouTube. Can you hear us good? Give me a thumbs up, please. We're talking about the Declaration of Independence, the organic law. thumbs up, please. Oh, you're hearing me. Okay.
You got 7.
Hi and yes. Okay, that's good. Okay, so where were we? We were right at the end of the Declaration of Independence there. Yep, all sorts of thumbs up. We were right at the end at the post-amble right here, weren't we?
Yeah, I would just go through that last. Well, let's see. We therefore. Actually, let's start again with we must therefore acquiesce. Here, no, down a little bit. We must therefore. This talks about they didn't want to denounce, but enemies in war and peace. Friends, let's talk about the fact they are making war against us.
Yeah, we must therefore acquiesce in the necessity. This is one of the few places the word necessity is used. It's only used in one place, necessary, in the Constitution and in the Second Amendment. So, anyways, this is a necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war and in peace, friends.
So,
Well, they want to make war on you, so then they're an enemy.
isn't it literally by? There's a word in Latin or whatever that talks about it. It's like obvious. It's like from the beginning, as of right now, there is no other state.
Ab initio?
In Latin?
Facie? Prima facie?
No. And there is a self-evident. That's
actually, I like that. It's self-evident that they're making war on us.
We
Yeah.
hold these truths to be self-evident.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here, it's self-evident that we are under military occupation, which most people would decry as being false, a stretch of the imagination.
Yep.
Which it's not. I would have never come to that conclusion. I felt like they were attacking me, but I thought it was just my imagination.
You felt like you were under a military control, right? But all right. So who is running the military control? Who do ultimately everybody in the military?
Well, ultimately, it went to the President of the United States.
Right. Okay.
And so under the Trading with the Enemy Act. And so you're the enemy again. Enemies in war and in peace, friends.
What a unique thing. We get to vote for our dictator.
Well, and so what's happened is we have a new president who is changing things, and I think the first thing, this U.S. aid organization, that was basically run by the CIA, so he's attacking the CIA directly. If you understand what's going on, and there was YouTube videos where 107 said that when the Speaker of the House went to meet Biden or whoever was acting as Biden, he the director of the CIA was there all the time. They never left, which makes you wonder if the CIA was really what was in control.
They were the handler.
Yeah. So
my question would be regarding this: how do we?
I'm just moving this so that the speaker will pick you up good.
How do we bring that into the light, out of the shadows?
What do you mean?
The fact that
We're at war.
right in a typical day. Now, we, of course, know a little bit how to do that now, but the people that are listening, let's say they don't know necessarily, first of all, what's the reason from a legal standpoint that we are
At war?
at war?
Well, the courts are all warfare. There's no justice. They say that you're presumed innocent, but the reality is you're presumed guilty. Ask Ken.
You're right. So that being the case, how do we then walk out of the house and start living that day with the understanding
We have to consider everything to be an act of war. And so then what you have to do is you, first of all, you never, ever, ever tell the enemy what you're going to do.
it's sort of like the French resistance in a way, but we're not
Right.
actively
Well, we are.
we are not actively taking up arms.
Yeah.
That's what the French resistance was doing.
Well, what was it that they did in India? It was what? Was it passive resistance or the Indian people in the subcontinent of India? Mahatma Gandhi.
Right. Well, that was the one that finally survived, but there was many, many violent
Insurgents?
insurgents that he was against, and it was ruining what was going on. And then you had the certain religious clashes as well, which were violent. Right. And that's what the deep state wants to cause.
What,
Here.
violent resistance?
They want us to take up arms.
They want us to take up arms. They don't care who takes up arms.
Right.
That gives them the excuse
Right.
Right.
to then
Crush it.
crush the rebellion
That's right.
in their mind. So my question is, and you brought it up earlier, Glenn, that people might not have been listening, but the way I was reading the Constitution one day, the president himself is responsible to me for what they're doing. And it could be through the one of the treaties or through one of the treaties that exists, let alone the fact that his subordinates are acting against me. So
look at all the ultra vires stuff.
But you got to understand that that the president himself, in a lot of cases, was responsible for it, and evidence of that is the Norman Dodd testimony.
how about today with the current
President?
executive?
Yeah, I don't think he's responsible.
Right. So
I
he
think
can
he's
actually
trying to
act
put a
without-
stop to it.
Right. So how do we give him what he needs, which they are doing through the FBI, the DOJ? I believe we can give him what he needs through the answers are in the Constitution, in my opinion, because that was what the founding father. I just haven't discovered the answer yet.
It's in the organic law. That's the reason I'm. Matter of fact, I got to do something, but I can't do it right now because we're having this meeting.
You want to jot a note
But
so you don't forget?
well, I need to look into Fifth Circuit filing. Is
You want
what
me
I
to write
want.
it down for you?
Fifth Circuit filing.
Fifth Circuit filing.
Yeah. They haven't responded yet, and so I'm guessing that I have to send them the record. And there's a website on the federal court case. That's what I wanted to do, is just look and see. Look and see what the. There we go.
So especially because supposedly even the current judiciary is part of the executive branch, that puts the president even more responsible to any violations. And so we think the Supreme Court is the answer. Isn't it the military commander?
Who is the Supreme Court?
Okay, the current one?
Now, I'm asking you a trick question. The Supreme Court, as far as I can tell, is 12 common law jurors.
Well, there's two national governments, there's
Yeah.
two Supreme Courts.
That's the point.
Right, so the question is, it depends on, are we in Puerto Rico? If we are, then the national government that doesn't follow the Constitution is in charge.
Okay.
So therefore, if I'm on the land and I'm a man, even with all the presumptions, I'm not, because they've stamped me with some all caps name that I haven't erased totally. in their world, the legal fiction. What is it in the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land? Let's read, and I don't know that Glenn has the ability to pull it up, so I'm just going to read it now at the moment, just to kind of put it on in our minds. This has to do with the Supremacy Clause, which is Article 6 totally. They usually say it's Article 6, Clause 2. This Constitution, which is the Constitution of the United States, not the Constitution of the United States of America. But guess what? This one says this Constitution. So when I called the Congress,
How similar are they?
there's only two words that are different.
Well, good luck with most people figuring that.
Well, if you tell me where the flaw is, then I know. I don't hit that button and blow my life up. I can actually blow their life up. Metaphorically, of course, for the record. There's no threats being made here. So this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof. So let's stop there. Laws, when I brought this up in my municipal trial for trespassing, when we prepared under Glenn's direction, and Ken's doing it now, when we go into the municipal, actually it doesn't matter what court. As you go into the court, you have a order to dismiss, and then based upon the reason, you do one for each reason. So what are the reasons? They're found in the organic laws, the main one being the Northwest Ordinance, which lists the common law guarantees prior to this Constitution. This is my current understanding. And so what I did, and it was interesting watching this former appellate judge, 70-some years old, now on a municipal bench, he forgot he didn't have power to arrest anybody he wanted without proper due process. So he had me thrown in jail because I failed to show up at a municipal court when they didn't serve me registered. They couldn't prove I got the letter because I had read the rules after I got the first letter. I said, well, before I answer this in whatever way I was going to do it, let me just see what his rules are. The rules were he had to send it registered.
Right.
So I waited for the registered letter. It never came. The cops,
Did they respect that at all or no?
at the moment, no.
Right.
But they know they're in trouble. And it's been the judge is in trouble, and so is the local municipality, because they approved of him. City council voted him as a municipal judge.
Here.
This is outside of my local municipality. So, for example, I would say, I think it was order. Is that what we did, Ken? Order to dismiss? Yeah. We put in just like we prepare a sample or a proposed order, just like the attorneys do.
Right.
And they apply. They both put in proposed orders. The judge decides which lawyer paid them the most money under the table, and that's who gets the. So I've prepared orders for each common law violation. Order to dismiss, or order of dismissal. And then the cause was for failure to provide the trial by jury. And that was it. And then I had two other pieces. One paper said, this motion is hereby denied, with his place for a signature, his name, and a place to date it. And the other was, because we're building a case.
Right.
And the other was, motion is hereby granted.
Right.
He never granted a single one. But what I did make him do was, on the record, I would read it. I tell him I have 8 items tonight before we go further with this municipal trial, and I'd like your ruling on these. And I would read them. I'd have the bailiff go and take up them to the bench. The judge would look at them and decide which one to sign. He signed the denial, and then I insisted he give it the court stamp. Now that he signed it, now I wanted the raised stamp, I wanted the raised stamp, which I have. Because then when I go to the appeal, when we go to the appeal, it's all done where he acted against what? This Constitution of the United States.
When you say you have a raised stamp, what do you mean?
they call it, what's the word they have,
Embossed.
embossed.
You possess it, or the court
No,
possesses
the court
it?
did. I have it in I have his raised stamp.
Okay.
He turned to the clerk. He had the gall to act like this. He said, he turned and looked over at them, sat back in his chair. Do we have a stamp, a seal? And she said, yes. He said, okay.
Apparently they don't use it all that much, huh?
I had to demand it. So I demanded it, and that's what we did. We went through that whole process. So I have 8 of them. Failure to give me judicial proceedings, a course of the common law. Failure to provide trial by jury. They're all in the articles of the Northwest Ordinance. And if you wanted to, you could end up in using some of the Bill of Rights too. And he has to decide, denied, or the moment he says, he writes granted,
Yeah.
the case is over and dismissed. He just dismissed the case.
Right.
So knowing he wasn't going to do that, I was just having fun stacking up all the constitutional violations. Ken is doing that right now. He just got out of court yesterday. How many of those did this man sign?
8.
So how long did it take for you to go through as your own counsel, meaning you had help there, but you were the one, you had assistance of counsel. You were your own counsel. So you were the counselor at the table. You were counseling yourself. And so you went through 8 items, right? So the reason I say this is because when I read Article 6, Clause 2 into the case, here's what happened. He interrupted me. You know, it wasn't okay for me to interrupt him.
Right.
It was okay for him to interrupt me. This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall, he didn't even let me get to the end. He yells, the laws of the United States. He didn't let me finish.
Made pursuant.
Made in pursuance thereof. So why aren't the laws they're using, and that's Glenn's point about the statutes, they're all color of law. So they have to be made in. Now, here's the trick they use. Guess what laws are made in pursuance to this Constitution?
Statutes. Yep. So they say that.
No, you have to. The liar, you have to get underneath, get in his brain, and discover the justification they use. They're never going to tell you, because I never use this Constitution. I use this Constitution. Now, the people who can't see me, I'm holding up 2 different constitutions. One is the Constitution of the United States. The other's the Constitution of the United States of America. The Constitution of the United States of America allows the powers to use the Constitution that gives them the ability to do what they want and ignore this Constitution. So in that Puerto Rico case, Glenn, does it say the Constitution or this Constitution?
Downs versus Bidwell?
Correct. Because it's probably going to say, actually, I'm not even going to say what it's going to say. Let's see. Because that's how, and see, the Supreme Court's going to know exactly what they're doing. Because once I know what the tricks are, I can write it so it fits this Constitution of the United States. If the being, the body, the man, the subject is actually claiming this Constitution. It depends what Constitution we claim.
That's open to debate. I don't think it's that technical. Anyways, so how do you want me to search?
Constitution. And this is
A lot of times they don't say Constitution, the word, they'll just say Article 1, Section 3 or something like that.
Well, you said that the summary, whatever it was, that you almost know by heart, that says...
This is a dissenting opinion.
Okay. So what does that mean? Is it immaterial?
Application of the Constitution, constitutionality, the law of the United States.
The one that says there's two national governments.
Yes, that's the dissenting opinion.
And that means it's no good. And why do we quote it if it's a dissenting opinion?
It still applies. It's true.
Not to the majority of the case. Whatever.
No, that the summary, the essence of what the guy said, they disagreed. But the little phrases and sentences might be perfectly applicable.
Okay, well, could we find those phrases where there's two national governments? Because each time we quote it, we use, and I love the line, and it's true. It gives us the understanding.
Right.
There's two national governments. One, and it uses the word constitution. I know it does. I've heard you say it multiple times.
So here, the Confederacy, owing to well-known historical reasons having proven a failure, a new constitution was formed in 1787 by the people of the United States for the United States of America.
Okay, now notice Confederacy's lowercase. They know exactly what they're doing. The common law.
Right.
And this constitution made in pursuance thereof. So if I make a law under this constitution of the United States of America, am I allowed to violate common law? Yes. Am I allowed to violate common law under this? No. The Constitution of the United States.
I got your point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So could you do a phrase where you quoted that phrase, two national governments? Maybe that's where, I don't know if you can actually search by virtue of a key phrase where it will give you those two together.
This is the text of what?
Downs versus Bidwell.
This is you've heard Glenn talk about two national governments, one that's under the Constitution and independent of the Constitution.
Right.
So that's actually the way that's phrased to me, if that's how it comes out. Independent of the Constitution. Independent of the Constitution. I'm holding up the Constitution of the United States, the genuine article.
Independent of that instrument.
Which is this, or any other thing they make up, is independent. Independent Treasury of 1921, for example.
Yeah, do we have the Treasury of the United States, or do we have the United States Treasury?
We have both.
Do we really?
Mm-hmm.
Which one is predominant?
I can't say. I haven't studied it, but
Here.
Okay, hold on, folks. We
says two national governments, one to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument.
There you go. There you go. That instrument. Now it said it's that. This is that. This, I'm holding up the Constitution of the United States. That's that instrument. That instrument that's referring to the Constitution. There's only one the Constitution, as far as the one that is under the common, that guarantees the common law under the martial law system. That's why we are taken in as guilty from the get-go. It's because of this Constitution of the United States of America. So when I was in the mental hospital, I called on the phone the U.S. Congressman for the district, not my district.
I'll bet that went over good, eh? He
Wow.
got told that somebody from a mental institution was calling him up.
Oh, I would have a great conversation. And what was more fun than that was calling into a radio station once a week. Nelson from Ancora. Everybody knows. It would be like, here, I don't know what your mental institution is. But I'm known as Nelson from Ancora, even though I live in like a Colleyville type home. It's hilarious. So when I got out, it kind of ruined it. You know, it wasn't as much fun. And we were all, meaning calling in, we were all the way out. This Ancora was at the edge of the guy's radio signal. It's a small, It was right at the, like, it's almost over halfway to Philadelphia from the Jersey Shore. The rest of the signal's going out into the Atlantic Ocean. So, like, it was impressive. He's like, it helps the advertisers. Look, people are listening from way out there. Well, he didn't know I didn't have a radio, to listen to him. But the point being that I was able to impact him, and he would always say, "Why don't you hire an attorney?" And I was busy learning why I didn't hire an
They
attorney.
desperately want you to hire an attorney.
Well, in his mind, I was
because
suffering needlessly.
An attorney gives them jurisdiction.
But I don't think he knows that as a radio host. But he might. But he just knows if it was him, that's what he would do.
Well, you're going to get railroaded either way. So.
Yeah. The purpose of the attorney is to make sure you don't have any appealable issues.
Right, good point, Glenn. Thank you for reminding me of that.
That's true.
No, I know. Thank you for.
That's exactly why, in exactly those words.
Right. And so imagine if
when I see the guys from jail come up, each time the attorneys have them waive their rights to appeal. It's like the focus.
Okay, so Darren, wake up if you're listening. Here's another thing. If you remember, when we go to Bedford to talk, this thing that he just said: is it right for your system that you're providing with your propping up with your tax money to do what? Have the attorney that's representing the client under the public defender's office, which you pay municipal, there's a municipal public defender, that they waive their rights. Now, do they waive their rights in municipal court?
You don't get a public defender in a municipal court.
In New Jersey, you do.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
What do you get here?
You just do it yourself or hire a lawyer.
Now, I've often wondered if you just put your head down and said, "I do not understand your law. I do not understand your law."
They go
Stuck
around
with
He
it.
did it your state.
The reason why you don't want to do that, in my opinion,
Yeah.
you're confessing that the state has to put you in a mental hospital.
If you go too far with it.
They could, and you've given them justification. I will never say I'm an idiot. That's a play that people do, and sometimes the judges laugh it off, but they also know if they wanted to.
Well, if you're accepting an attorney, you're confessing you're an idiot.
I'm sorry. So are you saying hire an attorney and say you're an idiot, or don't hire an attorney?
Well, the way I did, I wouldn't say I was an idiot. I was saying, he was asking if I understood the charges. I said, no. And he kept asking me that. And I said, no, I don't understand what's going on here. You guys don't seem to follow the Constitution.
Now, see,
And the word "understand," you know the slick
Yeah,
part.
I know.
from the one against the wall. Yeah.
Do you understand? Do you agree with me?
Stand under.
Stand under.
Right. And for a long time, it used to bug me when a lot of the sovereign people would say, "I overstand the Constitution." That bugged me to no end because I thought it was ridiculous. And then one day it clicked. Now I understand why I overstand the
Yeah,
Constitution.
you're one of the people.
Thank you.
Who created the Constitution.
So let's continue. So let's continue with Article 6, Clause 2. Oh, so the point that I was making was when I got to in Article 6, Clause 2, and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof. So one of our friends at the Tuesday meeting, the question is, where is the United States? His answer is in a file cabinet in the city of London. So this Constitution still says the very same thing. It says, there's only, like I said, two words that are different in the other one. It says here in this Constitution of the United States of America, which is the corporate Constitution. So he's talking about the Constitution of the United States. And guess what? My understanding is this Constitution for the United States of America is the Constitution of the United States. But that United States is the corporate United States. And that's what the Congress today is operating by, which was proven by the fact that the congressman for the district sent me this Constitution for the United States of America, which is the corporate Constitution, the Constitution of the United
So
States.
so let's get it all straight here. What's the difference between the two constitutions? It's one word.
2 words.
Yeah, right. And the whole thing.
Where is it?
Yeah.
Article 3.
So, yeah, right. So where it talks about the Supreme Court shall versus the Supreme Court will.
No, the United States shall and the United States will.
Right.
So let's look at that.
So,
Let's look at
I
that.
don't know if I'd want to hang my hat on that.
well, no joke.
No, I'm trying to explain to you my understanding so that when you make your decisions, there at least it's there to say, okay, if I respond this way, or Ken, how have you been doing in your opinion? It was now beating them off and actually turning the tables.
They just keep going. And the judge yesterday admitted that he can't dismiss it or he'd be fired.
Right.
So,
So-
apparently you have to appeal it to get dismissed.
Well, but you filed the appeal, and now they say, so you got to respond. We got to talk to Randy about that appeal because you're appealing an order from the judge. You know, you confused it all to hell when you started fucking throwing all that other shit in there.
What shit?
They went and said when you did the summary of the case, and you filed 160 pages, or how many pages of
Oh yeah, they didn't accept that, so I redid it.
yeah, but that confused it all to hell and back. You got to fucking keep it focused on the issue of the ruling. You're appealing the ruling that happened in the case.
Yeah, all I did is include the evidence for what I was saying.
Well, but it was just a summary. I mean, I think that you got it confused by doing all that stuff.
Okay, let's
I don't know, was that Chat GPT you were doing that with?
No.
Oh,
could we go to Article 3 and let's look at this because it will help us at least understand perhaps what's going on in the judicial system, because it's now become an executive agency. And let's read the same exact article and clause, or section and clause, article, section, and clause under this Constitution.
okay, here's Article 3.
All right, section 1.
Let's show it on YouTube.
Let's just review just Article 1, focusing on the words the United States. We'll just read it all the way through, and then we'll go back and say, okay, if because these words on Section 1 are exactly the same. So let's assume they're exactly the same, and yet they're coming from 2 different documents that apply to 2 different situations, one law, one legal. Okay.
Okay, so we need to make it bigger.
Now, Glenn is claiming that the judicial power today is nothing but an extension of the executive branch, which I concur.
Okay, so this is Article 3, Section what?
One
Okay.
and one only to start. The judicial power, you can read it now so they can hear you.
The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as Congress may from time to time ordain and establish.
So let's say that the corporate United States is what we're talking about, and the Constitution of the United States of America is what we're talking about, and the one Supreme Court of the corporate United States is what we're talking about. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court. That's true. There's one corporate Supreme Court. There's no lies here yet. It's because we're dealing with fiction and we're not in common law at the moment, because we're reading it as if it's coming from the Constitution of the United States.
The U.S. Supreme Court is a statutory court, though. It's a legislative court, so that means it's an inferior court. But anyways, go ahead.
No, I agree with you. To a sovereign man on the land, this corporate one Supreme Court is what we are claiming our trial by jury trumps, because the trial by jury is guaranteed under this Constitution of the United States. The trial by jury is not guaranteed under the corporate Constitution.
How so?
Because everything in there is fiction. It's a corporation.
Where does this say that?
Where does it say what?
That a trial by jury is not guaranteed in their corporate courts.
It's not guaranteed to to someone who is represented by an attorney, because that attorney is obliged to.
I'm not seeing that here anymore.
Okay, if you can't read between the lines, you read between the lines all the time as far as how you interpret something. This is my interpretation. Let's just leave it there. This is how.
I think you're in error.
Okay, well, you haven't heard the entire.
I think that if people insist on the trial by jury and they do it enough and persistently, I think that they'll, that it will work. You'll get it dismissed because they can't give you one because they're all admiralty courts. They're maritime courts.
So there's no such thing as an independent judiciary in a sense.
Right.
They're all under the legislature.
Right. But so I don't dispute that they can't give you. They have to follow their statutes. And we had Darren and I had that judge in it was Randy Kelton's son-in-law that flat out said that I can't give you a trial by jury. The statutes only allow me to give you a jury trial.
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
So where's your independent judiciary?
The independent judiciary is in the Constitution of the United States, which that man is not obliged to give someone unless they're able to show that they have defeated
the Northwest Ordinance. Is that still in force and effect? And does that
Yes.
specify trial by jury?
Yes, and that's why today, when they come up and try to arrest me under a fake warrant, they no longer do at this point. Now, we know in a communist state, they'll do whatever they want, whenever they want. However, if and when there's ever an executive or an FBI or an attorney general that isn't going to go along with the program, guess what? Next thing you know, off to Guantanamo they go.
Do you know who Edwin Vieira is?
I've heard of him.
He wrote a book called The Constitutional Militia, and then he did
The Sword and the Sovereignty.
The Sword and the Sovereignty, in which he put all of the pre-constitutional laws of the various colonies together. And bottom line is a well-regulated militia being what?
Necessary for a free state.
It's not optional, it's necessary. When they got rid of the militia, all the rest of the stuff became meat for the grist for the you talk about it forever. The real truth of the matter is the militia, who select their own officers, act as the fourth branch of government, and without it, you have no break on the creativity.
Okay, let me ask you this then: why on earth? Why would the cops run for the hills when we show them a passport?
I have no
Because
idea.
of their statute.
What's their statute?
We talked about it yesterday.
Okay, well, the people might not be here. I mean, you're talking just a brief summary. You don't have to prove every last thing every time, but the point is we're guaranteed safe conduct. It's 10 years in jail. When they pull us over with the emergency lights, violating the safe conduct is 10 years in jail.
Okay.
Because we're no longer under the corporate constitution. That passport, we've passed the port.
You got a point.
Was
it 1581?
I don't recall, Glenn. That's good to know. I need to know that. So the good news is
Passports.
that we are cornering them.
Safe conduct violation, 1545.
And at some point, the captain is going to say of the ship, the particular judge is going to say, I'm no longer going to risk my career because some other judge ran into that guy. And now that judge is asking me to cover him, and I'm no longer going to do it. It's like going up the chain of command in the military. The colonel finally says, sorry, Sergeant, sorry, whoever the next guy up is.
Well, think of Randy's son-in-law. He said, I'm not going to give you a trial by jury because all I can give you is a jury trial. They think they have immunity.
I don't think they do.
Well, they think they do, and then In the lower courts, Randy said, if you think the law and the facts on your side are going to help you at all, you're deluding yourself.
Right.
But just imagine how horrible that is for us as a nation to absolutely know beyond a reasonable doubt that you cannot get justice out of a court that is for the people to get justice out of.
Well, the reason why it's not, we're under the mistaken presumption or the mistaken conclusion. It's not true. And the way to defeat it is the way we are currently learning to do that.
Well,
because
can an average man of ordinary intelligence do everything you're doing?
Yes.
I disagree. You guys you spend days and days and days.
No, it's because can the average man take a key?
The problem is there's all sorts of disinformation out there,
Exactly.
and people don't know which one to follow.
No doubt.
And the biggest thing is people. There's all this fucking fraud about the minor estate, and that you can do commercial stuff in there and resolve the matter.
I agree, and they're okay with spending all sorts of our time, our sovereign's time, dealing with this that we're doing now. But part of my objective is to give the people the truth that works. How many people have police stand down now when there's a warrant? How many people have a police chief refusing, a municipal police chief at the moment, refusing to execute a warrant from a municipal judge?
It's color of law.
I asked you, how many people? There's probably not many.
Actually, I got stopped by Colleyville, and they told me there's a warrant. I said that's color of law, and it's not a valid warrant. And they said, well, we just wanted to make you aware of it.
Because, Glenn, you have flipped the table. They know who's boss. Glenn doesn't realize yet that he's operating under the Constitution of the United States. And the Colleyville police are operating under the Constitution of the United States of America until such time as they come upon someone who knows the Constitution of the United States.
You know, in Philadelphia, the average IQ of the average cop is
But the cop
87.
doesn't know that. They're just doing what they're told.
Yeah, they're doing.
Okay, right. And so let's talk about the fact you've never presented a passport, have we? Glenn
No,
himself.
I haven't recently. I don't have one.
Okay.
I need to get one.
Okay, so here's my point. Okay, all of us in this room are coming from behind the eight ball. Everybody in pretty much in New Jersey, the country is coming from behind. And most people have joined the system and are getting their protection from the king and his people that have the shield to offer them, which are the knights, which are the esquires. And it's easier to just take the protection of the esquire and live a happy life. It's like we're in merry old England. True patriots don't want to do that. But here's what happens to true patriots. When they hear the truth, it's like a bell. And it goes off and they can't unring it. And what'll happen is once we give them the proper symphony and not all the junk notes that the CIA and all the misinformation, even some people trying to do the right thing. So that's why we try to give them stuff that has worked. Glenn's saying what he does works. But how can the average man do what Glenn does? No. Can I? No. But I have to find a simpler way. And you know how I found it? My passport. When I watched that video in Miami, Florida area, where the young black man wanted to be free, and he only put his he was in a car, put his window down 2 inches, told the cop, I'm sovereign, I don't have to have a license and no insurance. The calm white cop's 45 years old, said, do you have a passport? The man said no. Within 2 seconds, he took out his baton. He already had it in his hand because he knew what he was going to do. He was demonstrating where our mistake lies. I heard the man. He wasn't allowed to tell me as another white man that here's a way that the black man could have gotten out of his problem. Guess what? When we have to treat you as black men as well of old, as a white man, he was telling me, here's how to get out. I'm like, thank you very much. So now let's go ahead and read this safe conduct, 18 USC 1545.
Okay, well, it says whoever violates any safe conduct or passport duly obtained and issued under authority of the United States shall be fined under this title and imprisoned not more than 10 years or both.
Why does it say, this just hit me, why does it say any person who violates any safe conduct?
No, it doesn't say any person. It says whoever.
Exactly. Whoever. That cop becomes a whoever. He becomes a man when we hand him that passport. He's responsible for his oath at that moment.
2 nights ago, I was scrolling through YouTube, and there was a video of an officer. He was driving down a road. There was a young man, about 16 years of age, walking the other way. The cop stopped and got out of his car. His car cam was running. His chest cam was running. He went up to the kid, and the kid had a BB gun underneath his shirt. And the cop saw it, pulled out his gun, shouted something at him, and then opened fire on the young man. The young man fell belly down with his BB gun there, and he said, "It's a BB gun." And the cop emptied his 15-round magazine into this kid. The cop was charged with murder. The kid was dead. So you come and you've got all these papers, and it's this Constitution. Those people, either they're not bright enough to understand, or they don't care. But I'm telling you, as a friend, watch yourself, because you could end up stone cold dead as well as stone cold right.
And that would be a decision that my Father in heaven has to make. But I'm not going to make a move that's foolish. I don't carry a gun that's visible.
Right.
So if those people, how old was the boy?
16.
Okay.
I mean, he was just a kid.
You know, I think that there's plenty of people in Texas here that carry concealed all the time with no problem because they're intelligent. I'm not saying you know what the average intelligence is. So
It's not enough.
that's why we need the United States, the federal government, to basically say, for those people that aren't capable of handling sovereignty and freedom, we have an answer, which is force. The problem is, I didn't have the proper understanding of how to trump them. Now we are learning. Just like Glenn just said. And I'm sure his name is in the database, and I'm sure if and when he ever gets a passport, he's not going to argue a lot of different things. He's just going to take out his passport and have the guy, whoever that's pulling him over, about to violate his safe conduct or passport. And he'll at that point, see, the Charlie impressed me that you have to notice that you know how they have presumption with the license plates? I mean, Glenn has a current license plate for his reasons.
He doesn't want to deal with it.
Right. He'd rather so he's surrendering a little bit of his sovereignty to make his path a little smoother. And he's living his private life. And that's his decision. Other people are going out there taunting the cops without doing all the background that we are.
Well, here's an interesting question. You're aware of these people who are doing First Amendment audits, correct? You've heard of them?
No.
They video
maybe.
the cops,
Right.
and they do it from a safe distance so that they're not on
Interfering.
on cop territory. Yeah, one guy was across the road, and the cops went and charged him with interfering with police.
Right.
So, what's your opinion of all of that? I think they're making an impact.
They are, and what's going to end up happening is if and when we, basically this is a roundtable discussion, when we, the people, find enough information that those men that are out there knowing and exerting their First Amendment, when we start giving them real, actionable intelligence to use, they're going to take it to a new level. Right now, all they're doing is taunting the king's men up on the wall. And occasionally some of them will, get shot or put in jail because they're
I would like to point out in 1787, 1776, we the people, in the form of the militia, supplied the law enforcement. after a while, I believe it was in Philadelphia or one of those cities, they had a statutory police. The statutory police idea spread and spread and spread, and then the right to keep and bear arms.
Yeah, they're basically the Pinkertons.
Yeah, the right to keep and bear arms became very subtly suppressed. The cops would prefer that you didn't carry a gun, and they'll take care of everything. We're in charge here. And slowly we went from being the citizens in charge of our constitutional republic to being a bunch of slaves, and we have professional police, and you have to go and ask the policeman, can I do this? Do I have permission? Can I do this? So we're all caps names. We're civilis mortis, civilly dead, and we really have. I mean, you have any rights that you've seen recognized? I've been in front of 5 different judges, and every one of them violated my rights to an extraordinary degree. I had no rights in front of those people.
Well, and I can tell you, in my opinion, humble opinion, why. It's
You know,
very simple.
It's not important. What's important is a public servant who is not acting in good faith, who knowingly, willingly, and deliberately is acting in deception of a citizen. That's the situation we've got. And you may have 1,000,001, you've got 2 words in the Constitution, and you think that justifies doing what they're doing?
I'm not saying that, Joe. What I'm saying is we have not properly educated each other, and that's why we're here tonight.
I'll agree to that.
To improve.
Ken, how many guys were there when they broke down the door and shot you with beanbags?
About 60 armed men.
6-0?
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
just against him only. Yeah.
So if you were to stand up and say, hold it, I got a passport, what do you think those 60 armed men would have done?
I don't think it would change their behavior.
I got my doubts.
I disagree, and also, how would he handle the very situation today?
You disagree.
Yes,
How
I
could
do.
you possibly say
I'll
that?
explain. Because did they shoot you before you started running?
No, they shot me as I was fleeing for my life. They
Exactly.
drove
Okay, hold
military
on a
vehicles.
second. And you were in fear under Waco. I get it. I'm not. How would you handle it today? Let's ask that question, Joe. Okay.
How would you handle it today?
I don't know. What do you think, Darren?
You got
saw
60
the
guys.
videos.
Muscled up, jacked up on
No
testosterone and
trespassing
adrenaline.
signs.
No. How would he handle whatever was going on
What I would have
outside?
done is when he
No, that's not. Okay, I'm sorry. What
I
would you
would've-
have done?
I would have gotten someone other than my son that's in the house to go out and ask him if I can have protection to come out and talk. I would talk. I wouldn't go out myself because my church doing something to you. I was just,
Well,
ask
who did
him.
they know who they were looking for?
he had to have someone that said, I'm here to
Do you think that if you had
Negotiate.
put your arms up and said, I surrender, and walked out like this, they would have not taken you down?
that's what they wanted. They said, hands up over your head, the announcement kept being.
Okay.
Or we can't promise that you won't be harmed or something like that.
Okay.
Well,
So-
that's probably what you should have done then. is-
Okay. Exactly. So what I'm
Well,
saying is
these
we're
are
learning.
Super aggressive.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Very white people.
They're a bunch of hired thugs. There's no doubt about it.
We're
But
not disputing that.
You don't get much time to think.
I would have
I
put my hands up and I said, "Hey, I don't know what's going on here." But and that's when I would have had a passport.
Glenn's comment is, we're at war. And part of war, Sun Tzu said, all war is deception. You've got what appears to be courts and what appears to be judges and what appears to be counsel for your defense, and it's all a deception. We're at war.
I hear you, but the good news is,
Yeah.
why did the founding? Have you read the entire Federalist? I have 3 times, and at the end of the day, they
Only
said
3 times, that's not enough to memorize.
the reason why I didn't memorize it. The point is that they were trying to create a government that we didn't have to go through the same bloodshed ever again, if possible. That's what they were doing when they were agonizing over what was in the founding document,
Okay.
the organic laws,
All right.
because they were like, we don't want to have if we don't do something different that's never been done before. They talked about at least 5 different republics I never even heard of before.
Right.
the Peloponnesian.
They did their research.
They were educated men. They were men of letters. They knew Greek, Latin. It's a disgrace what I have knowledge of. So I'm just thankful that they did most of the hard work for me. I can actually at least get the benefit of what they did and maybe understand a teeny bit of it. But they basically were forming a guaranteed republic if and when those that were capable of keeping it.
Like Franklin said, if we can keep it.
Right. And it had
No,
nothing.
I believe he said for as long as you can.
No, that's not. I don't think so.
I think
He said a republic if you can keep it.
Right. He said it. That's the quote.
That's
out
where
there.
I got it anyways.
Yeah, that's
I'll
pretty
look it
much.
up.
Yeah, please do. And
Yeah.
get back to the.
But I
get back
believe
to-
it was for as long as you can keep it, which implies what?
No, you're
If the
just.
thing is got an expiration date.
Well,
But I think you have an irrational exuberance. I believe the real truth of the matter is, you know, Lewis Moore that you spoke to, the reason he quit the sheriff's department, he said to me, the sheriffs had an unspoken wish, all of them, you know, what they really wanted was to execute or murder one of the citizens and get away
Away with
with it. Right? So
Is he speaking for every sheriff?
all I can tell you, you know, I know there's a few good sheriffs.
he used to work for the sheriff's department?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
in Metairie, Louisiana, one of those places. And we all want good, honest judges, good, honest cops, good, honest prosecutors. And what we've gotten is the worst of all possible worlds. People who look like they're good, honest cops. People who look like they're honest prosecutors.
Right.
People who look like they're honest judges.
Right.
Stand right there and swear under oath, and then sell you into slavery.
No, they're swearing. They're not violating their oath.
That's a deception.
In their,
2 words.
Yeah, I
That's a
disagree. I
deception.
think they're still violating their oath. I don't care.
Sure they are.
the only reason they're violating their oath. No, the oath they're taking. Okay, you're saying.
You're an apologist for
No.
tyranny.
Okay.
Yeah, it
here's-
sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yeah,
No,
really.
no. Okay, let me ask you this. Why Charlie brought this up? It was pretty enlightening. Why are they and he explained the answer to the question. Why is Miranda no longer required?
That I have no idea.
Okay. It's related to everything I'm saying now, answers that question.
I know why.
Please.
Miranda was spelled with a small m, and it should have been with a capital M. And since it was spelled with a small m, it just doesn't apply. That's all. Obvious. What kind of an idiot, doesn't know that, right?
That's not the correct
It's
answer.
an attempt to deceive.
No. What
You've
is the-
never been married, so you've never been subject to repeated and at length deception.
Okay. So the question is, why? How does Miranda relate to this
I have no
conversation?
I have no idea.
Because you're claiming that.
Miranda's not a constitutional.
Okay, let's
right.
look up Miranda.
It's not
So
constitutional.
you're supposed to read you your rights.
That's not a constitutional right.
Well, it was for a
Hold on.
while, and
Let's
then it
examine-
changed.
No, you're correct. And so let's find out why did the corporate United States decide, the corporate Supreme Court decide it was no longer absolutely necessary to give people their Miranda rights?
I have no idea.
Because they're already guilty unless they come forward and identify yourself. Identify
Who
yourself.
on earth would know that?
We have to tell them. I can
Who on earth would know that?
Everyone
would an
here-
ordinary man of average intelligence know that?
yes. You can
Oh,
talk.
don't be absurd. Nobody knows that.
No, the point is when they would know it? After they learned it. How are they going to learn it? When we tell them. We can demonstrate everything about what we're doing because of the success. You're still, in my view, you're still so
Beat up.
perturbed.
Yeah. Of what
You're
he went through.
perturbed.
But it's something they could easily understand.
Well, wait
Once
a
they
minute.
got the
This is
process,
Randy
you got to do
Kelton.
this.
No, this is Randy Kelton's argument. His argument is that they took an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, separate, independent as to whether or not what you claim.
So you shouldn't have to assert those rights.
You have the right to life, liberty, and property in the United States. Does that mean a cop can walk up and say, "Do you claim the right to life?" And if you don't answer immediately, he can shoot you right in the head because you didn't assert your right to
He
life?
can do it. Criminals can do it. Anybody can do it.
That's because they presume that you're one of the slaves.
Exactly. And that's why they
Well, the
leave
system
people.
is set up so that everybody, unless they are declaring,
That's
is
what he's
one
trying
of the
to
slaves.
say.
And if you declare you're not one of the slaves, they say you're a sovereign citizen, and they arrest you first.
So let me ask you this, Joe. Have you ever taken any of your issues or solutions before a public body who has an oath to the Constitution of the United
For
States
an example,
in order to educate? You're an educator, correct?
I disagree with you completely.
Okay. And you're
They
and
take
you're
the oath to preserve,
Okay.
protect, and defend the Constitution. That implies, as a prerequisite, that they read the thing. No?
Nope.
That is
Most of
malfeasance
them
in
can't
office.
tell you 3 of them.
Now, that's malfeasance in office.
It is. But my point being is that I have found the most success
Yeah.
of turning on lights. Last night when I got out of the meeting, 3 men were standing there, and they told me they weren't waiting for me. They were talking amongst themselves. They had just gotten an approval for a church off of Airport Freeway, and the city of Bedford had to give them the okay to change the zoning or whatever they did. Large building, probably it's going to be 1,000 people.
What's your point in this?
I walked out, and in our conversation, they said, "You enlightened us." These are millionaires. You enlightened us. They thanked me. And that is because I took the time to prepare and go and put myself out there. The one person the 2 people in the whole place that had scowls on their face, the 2 people, there was 50 people there. City officials, the only 2 people was the cop and the city attorney.
They had scowls.
They had scowls.
Were these certified scowls or were they ad hoc scowls? All right, what on earth did they have scowls about?
The fact that I was unhinged, I was pulling the curtain back on their fraud. You can complain fraud all the time and complain about it in your beer, but do something about it. And what I'm doing is going to the
That's a good point.
I'm going to the public, and as we improve, what the deal will be is we print up a 3-minute speech. You talk about Alex Jones. Imagine everybody this coming month at their local city council, they had a 3-minute speech, which is neuro-linguistic programming, and the next thing you know, we're educating people, and the lights are being turned on. You're curing them, but you have to prove it first. And I do it naturally. There's no, I haven't been trained like you, but I just know how people's attitudes change when you say things a certain way, and you enlighten them.
Well, what's the point of the oath of office then?
The oath of office is because, pull up.
Does
Glenn,
the oath of office
hold on, Glenn. Hold on.
I hereby swear to preserve, protect, and
Hold on.
If somebody demands that I do so?
Could you please pull up statute?
Is that insane or what?
The first
Where we
thing,
come, that's
first
where we
statute,
become.
statutes at large 1, the first act.
If
Okay.
you have
First
to
thing,
commit some
this
to your
is-
living
thank you.
hand, that may.
Oh, yeah, but you lost at sea for 7 years. Yeah, on and on and on and on.
Okay, where words are many, sin is not absent. So the fact
Rules
is,
of construction. 1.
No.
You said the first
I
statute.
said this statutes at large is what I said. Statutes at large, 1789.
Well, that's a little bit more difficult because
I know, but it's critical because once we see it, you'll understand the answer to your question. You're standing here saying, "What about the oath?" And I'm going to show you about the oath.
Oh,
And you know when I
go
fa-
shortcut everything and tell me what
No, because the people online need to see it so that they have they can see it for themselves because it's
when Randy said to his son-in-law or whoever it was, talked to him about the examining trial, and he said, "No, we don't do it that way."
they don't have to.
There's 100,000 men behind bars in the state of Texas for whom probable cause has never been developed, determined.
It doesn't have to be, because though they have been now educated about who they are, and they've been defrauded, and we need to do what we can to cure.
yeah, I
their-
think you're being an apologist for them. I think that's
No,
a bunch
I'm
of
not.
crap.
I'm not. You're not listening.
See, those are
Glenn and I-
Texas
well,
rules of
wait a
criminal
minute.
procedure.
Let's
That's
hold a
not
vote.
Constitution. They should follow that.
Let's hold a vote. How many here think that they should follow their oath of office independent of what the defendant does? I do. Well, no, you just said that they don't.
But they don't.
You
though.
said they don't
that's
have
not
to.
the question you asked.
What is the question?
You
then?
just said how many think they should. I went like this.
I think they
So
should.
be careful about what you're asking. You're being clouded by your
I'll do better
pain.
next time, I promise.
You're asking a question, so I raised my hand, and then I don't know if you're doing it on purpose, Joe.
What specifically?
Trying to confuse me.
No. Randy said his son-in-law says we just throw him in jail because that's the way we do it. We've always done it.
Exactly.
Fuck probable cause. Screw it, an examining trial.
Okay.
No 1670 order.
Okay.
Get your ass
Okay,
by the say-so of a cop.
let me ask you this. Why has Randy not taken this information to a local city council and asked the question, would you guys consider not forwarding the portion of the money to the county that's related to the jails and put it in an escrow account until they answer these couple questions?
What I do know is that he talks to local law enforcement and local judges all the time, and the judges are all for doing examining trials. And they just don't do it that way. That's why he's suing the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, because they have failed in their supervisory
That's
capacity.
wonderful. But how is that helping anybody in the general public become aware? It's not.
Well, I think if you get a decision, then you can make people aware of you got a decision.
That would be helpful.
you
I'm not
guys
I'm not disagreeing with what he's doing. I'm just saying for those of us who aren't Randy, who's phenomenal and doesn't.
Okay,
have
here's one stat one.
One stat one. Wow.
one. Excuse
That's
me.
the first
Please
one.
repeat that.
One stat one.
Okay, Joe. Guess what it's about?
I have no idea.
The oath.
Okay, good. What's it say?
You can turn and look. It's on the screen. And I decided I'm going to start reading the statutes at large for myself. And I started at 1-1 stat 1. And I'm like, wow, the founding fathers gave me what I needed. This is a good start.
Well,
George
An
Washington.
act to regulate the time and manner of administering certain oaths. That was the first act of Congress.
And look, it's in quotes. I do solemnly swear.
Or affirm, as the case may be.
So what happens when you review the statutes, at some point it'll say obsolete or repealed. Guess what has not been, what's not obsolete or repealed?
what, the oath of office?
Yep.
Yeah, right. Yeah, what could be more fundamental than the oath of office?
Nothing. But what has happened, how many times do we have to go over it? We know the king has infiltrated. We know the bankers have attacked this land of the free and home of the brave and done everything. They have no conscience. We get all that. The question is, what do we do about it? And what I'm doing about it.
All right, this is very much more reasonable. I can't imagine it being successful, but it is more reasonable.
So what I'm doing about it is having fun, turning on a few lights, and it's like bait. If the people take it, I've seen it happen. When I talk to someone who says, "Oh yeah, my family went back to 1820 or whatever," I'm
Right.
like, this is going to be a piece of cake because the information is in their DNA. All I have to do is wake it up, and then they become hungry for it.
All right, okay.
And there's people there last night. We're on council. It's not the typical council because the typical council I'm associated with is anti-freedom because they are under a communist state government. The fact that we're in the state of Texas, there's still a certain semblance of freedom of the people's thinking.
Well, when the presumption of innocence is gone and the denial of due process is routine, almost without exception.
Well,
that's
You
where
know,
we're
they
at.
want people to lose confidence in the government because that creates anarchy, and that's exactly what they want. So you're playing right into their hands.
Exactly.
In a sense,
Thank you,
yeah,
Glenn.
yeah.
Can
In a
thank you.
sense, In a
for,
sense,
for making that
I
that
confess my fault.
that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
So now imagine it's like when they count the votes or whatever. If you flip one from to the other side, it's more than one vote. It's two. Like the difference is two. Every time you switch somebody, it's two. And then when you get like one of my family members, it took him quite a while to wake up because he had your same lack of hope and
Well, my personal experience, I'm not
and
making
his
this
and
up.
his.
I
No,
went in front of five
no.
judges, and they all
I-
utterly betrayed
I
me,
hear
the
you.
Constitution,
I hear you.
we the people,
I
etc.
hear you. And guess what? Comey violated his.
Woo! Whoa!
But you know what? Justice.
Justice is come down.
Okay. So let's cooperate with that and say, okay, it's not
Yeah.
like we oftentimes we want the immediate answer. So we have to be willing to fight the longer fight,
Yeah, I got it.
march the longer, and we're tired. We don't want to do it. I get it.
We can't abandon the Constitution and the laws made pursuant thereof.
It's interesting.
Which one are you talking about?
It's interesting.
It actually says this. I'm sorry, Glenn. Forgive me. Go
It's interesting that the Secretary of the Senate and the Clerk of the House of Representatives don't have an oath to support the Constitution. Their oath is simply to truly and faithfully discharge the duty of the said office.
We're not representatives of the people, are they?
No, they're not. No, that's
That's
true.
exactly it.
Did you highlight the first one? I didn't see you do it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, when you now see Glenn, his friend sent him the deal about the sovereign citizen.
Yeah.
So all we do now, just tonight, just for fun, send this out into the ether. See how long it takes it to come back
All right.
through the channels.
All right.
Publish it. Send it to me, Glenn. I'll send it to the people I send
Yeah.
things to, and they'll be
Who made the long march?
the Oklahoma Indians.
Chiang Kai-shek. They made a long march across China, and they ended up in Taiwan, and they took Taiwan. Taiwan is a republic. China is a communist country.
And
So you're in charge of the long march.
now notice that this particular, the sixth article. Well, I don't know if it matters. I'm not sure how severe the importance of case is when you get into the statutes at large, because it said sixth article lowercase of the Constitution. See, at that time, there was only one, the Constitution they were referring to, because Article 6, Clause 1, regarding the Confederation, may refer back to what was called the Constitution of the United States of America. But what was that? If it was before the Constitution of the United States of September, what on earth could that be? And I'm going to let you read this. And
Were the dates of enactment of those two constitutions different?
I haven't had time to find it yet.
I'd like to know.
Who wouldn't? Well, let's do some research. Bring us that information. Here, I can give you these two pieces of information, and you can find that answer. I haven't had the time.
Look, I'm sorry, I'm a legal fiction. I have no obligation to do anything.
Well, then don't complain about getting put in jail and being abused if you're a legal fiction,
All right.
because that's exactly why. That's why it happened
That's why
to
it
us,
happened.
not just to you, not just to you, to all of us. So guess what? When someone's child is
Taken by CPS.
taken by CPS, or even just somebody who's like, all right, I can either play along with the system, or you know what, I think I'm gonna do a little digging, and I'm not gonna let them.
So here's a
So,
question.
so let's get back to the original topic of this discussion, which was the Declaration of Independence and the last words of the Declaration of Independence.
We were talking about enemies in war, and we're still on the war problem.
Right.
That's the problem. We're still on the war problem. We can proceed and finish the declaration, but this is enemies in war and peace friends. The passport makes that police officer at peace with me because it's a violation likely of the Geneva Convention.
Well, it's yeah. Well, that's the reason they passed those statutes in support of the Geneva Conventions. See, when they went and the U.S. adopted the Geneva Conventions, they basically same thing with the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and what they did is they'll adopt it, It's kind of like a qualified endorsement where they incorporate that into the statutes. Okay, and so like for example, the religious beliefs, 18 USC 247. That's actually also in the First Amendment. Um, but so they only approve what they put in the statutes. The rest of it they haven't approved. Basically, is what they do, which is kind of a cop out because
what was
there's
the
a
name
bunch
of
of
that?
stuff.
What was the name that you just quoted?
What?
The International Convention.
International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights.
By mistake, I ordered a bunch of copies of that. I've got them in my car, and I'd be happy to give anybody a copy of the International Convention.
I'll take one.
I'm just going to throw.
Well,
one.
I got
take one.
PDFs. I got PDFs and they're free, and I can email them to anybody that wants one.
Well, that's another.
I would like one to have
I'll
to
take
just
one.
glance at and start dancing.
They're printed out, and I had them printed by mistake. They got the wrong
The
instructions.
U.S. has adopted that as Treaty 95-20.
Right.
Okay. And I asked a friend of mine, how do treaties relate to me on the land?
Right.
How does a treaty affect me? And according to her, the treaties are related to the individuals, not the states. The states have no. It's between the government, that we the people,
The general government.
the general government,
Right.
between the two countries. That's why the Moors are succeeding, because the agreement is the treaty.
Tell me more about that. Why are the Moors succeeding?
Because they're operating under a treaty. That's why the feds leave them alone.
Wow.
They can't interfere with contracts.
Wow.
It's
Well,
It's
That's
treaty
what I'm
law,
saying. It says
and
supreme
the
law of the land.
Constitution
This
says
Constitution and all treaties made
in
pursuant
pursuance
So
thereof.
is it possible to have a
Whoa.
treaty? And I say, guess what? There's a corporate treaty, a corporate convention called the Hague. This is my opinion. I can't prove it.
There's the Hague Convention on Private International
The
Law.
Hague, Geneva.
I believe it's a
Well, the
legal
Geneva
purpose.
Convention, the Hague Convention on Private International Law is still in process. Okay, they still engage in stuff like there's
What do you mean engage in stuff?
you go online and you can see that they're still doing stuff even now.
Right.
There's-
It's constantly updating.
Yes, that's right. But the Geneva Convention was done back in 1949, and it's basically done. It's set in stone. The Geneva Convention after the war.
Most countries respect it.
Yes, and guess who has to?
I have a comment to make regarding the Lieber Code. Please correct me if I'm mistaken, but as far as I can tell, the enemy combatants don't have to declare war before they can conduct war. What do you know about that? Anything?
Well, that's probably true.
They don't
I
have
mean,
you don't have to warn your
But
enemy
that's
before
nothing.
coming.
Yeah, that's right.
No, but guess what?
Article 1 of the Lieber Code says the physical presence of the army declares its martial law. They
Right.
don't have to.
Right, but the insurgents have to be protected still as long as they're not inactive. Like if there's no proof, somewhere there's one of the codes that talks about the insurgents are basically protected by the United States.
Well, not really.
Well,
See, they've attacked us domestically, right? And they're inside the United States. So now constitutional rights go out the window and the law of war kicks in. And there's if for us we have constitutional rights, but for them it's just law of war. And that's completely different. And they're not protected. But they have to do a counterinsurgency. In other words, the military engages them, but it's fifth generation warfare. It's all about lies and stuff like that, and so that's why there was a group of generals that asked Donald Trump to run, and that's why when he lost the election, they knew that it had been stolen. Matter of fact, I think they set it up so that they would steal it, and everybody would see it. Okay, and so because Trump, they accused Trump of doing an insurgency, which was the J6 stuff that went on. And in fact, if Trump would have this 107 talks about that. If Trump would have asked the military to step in, that would have been an insurgency. And so Trump got the National Guard. He offered them, but the Pelosi says no, we don't want them. And so the National Guard coming into D.C. We know how the National Guard came into D.C. and occupied D.C. for a period of time, but that wasn't insurgency. That was the National Guard, and which is different. You see what I'm saying? But so the military cannot step in, but the law of war. They have to. It's basically a bunch of generals have launched a counterinsurgency, and from what I'm hearing, they've actually launched 3 or 4 times counterinsurgencies, and they failed. But this one here is succeeding, and so it's a counterinsurgency, is what it is.
So Miranda, in my view, based upon Charlie's conclusions, I happen to agree with. He said, because he's from, he's lived longer than I did. The Miranda, they were finding out that because of the corporate constitution and the fact that they were doing the fiction thing, Miranda really didn't apply. So they just said that the law enforcement.
So legal fiction, what do you call it?
Corporate.
Legal fictions don't have the right to have Miranda read to them because they don't have any rights.
Correct.
Right.
No, they have a right to reside.
They have a right to reside within the borders. Yeah, remember that.
That's it.
Right. You have
Those are
no
the only
rights.
rights that you have.
Right.
A U.S. citizen only has the right to reside.
Right.
Yeah.
As a citizen of the United States,
Yeah.
which I brought up last night, and that was one of the reasons the 3 men that was part of what I mentioned last night in my 30-minute speech in front of Bedford City
Well,
Council.
when Darren's group used to meet in the pizza parlor, a cop came and they were talking about it's driver's licenses are commercial only, and he was pissed off. He was madder than a wet egg. That's not true. And he got up and stomped out. And the truth of the matter, as far as I can tell, Eddie Craig and Randy, it's only commercial.
Right.
That's all the law
Right.
provides for.
And there's no way for them to defeat that. It's so clear that's
Well,
the
it
truth.
doesn't seem to make a whole hell of a lot of difference to the average cop on
Well,
SWAT
you
car.
got to understand the cops are screened for low intelligence and a propensity for aggressive behavior, and so who cares what they think?
One of the reasons
They take orders, and so you set it up so that they get ordered to leave you alone.
right, and
Okay.
then not tell why.
No, that's right.
They
No,
just
they
say-
never tell them why. They're
Okay.
screened for low intelligence
So
and a
one of the
propensity for
reasons
aggressive
the city
behavior.
attorney last night, low intelligence, no doubt. But guess what? There's a guy who works for Bedford who isn't low intelligence, and he's a nice guy. And when he told me that he didn't get involved in police work to become a thug, the anointing hit me.
Well, and so some of them, even though they're screened for low intelligence, doesn't mean they're stupid,
I don't.
and they figure things out on their own.
Well, there's got to be some decent people in the world.
There is. There's a lot of them.
There's
A lot of the cops are actually decent people,
Yeah, sure they are.
and
And you see, they'll go out and risk their life for help
absolutely,
somebody. They'll run into a
Absolutely.
burning building. I
absolutely.
mean, it would be so nice if they were just decent, honest, and reasonable. I do not ask any more from our public servants than I would from the average Walmart greeter. So far, I've been bitterly disappointed.
When I was in jail, the corrections officer, one of them, when we were walking down the hall, he was looking forward, whispering, his lips not moving. What do we do? What do we do? To me, because he couldn't be caught talking to an inmate
Right.
about what to do.
Right.
So
Right.
that's why when I have the free exercise to talk to we won't say his name tonight.
So he was a good cop, and he wanted
No,
to.
And so why do you think? Guess who came over and was eavesdropping? I was talking to the youngest guy when Steve was at court, and
Right.
Darren went into the back room with Steve. I said, you know what? Let me just go have fun with this situation. So I went out to the young cop, who younger than me, he's probably 40, 45, and I
That
started.
is quite younger than you.
I started explaining to him about the gold fringe flag. And what happened was the senior cop who had been in the room with Darren came back out, and he started eavesdropping on what I was telling his subordinate, the younger cop, that isn't up on what's going on as far as the scams. that's, I think, one of the reasons why the attorney and that cop were so upset. Because I was turning the lights on for one of their younger up and coming cops that they thought they were just going to, you just keep doing what we want, and you'll help us in our mission. When he starts realizing that all this time, well, I explained to him about a warrant. Like Glenn says, it has to have A, B, C. And I said, I was arrested on a warrant, and it didn't matter because the cop didn't know any better, but I still gave him the Constitution because he's going to be liable for violating my rights and can lose his job and his because I've noticed him. The passport notices them like that. That's why you carry the passport. They're noticed. They're noticed.
Okay.
They're
When I get a
noticed.
passport, I'll try it.
Well, have fun and go speeding down the road someday and
No, I
watch
don't
them.
speed. I don't do anything.
Okay. And you're not. When was the last time you were damaged by a law enforcement?
I live in terror all of my life. All the time.
Okay.
So Randy would say the violation of my personal
It
liberty
continues.
and security is ongoing.
Right, and I'm trying to slowly but surely help you decompress, move you out of the submarine up to the surface so you can breathe and start, breathing the clean air and get some, good nutrition, for your soul. And I get it. We've all been there. I spent not as long as you. I wasn't as harmed as you. I get it.
We've all been in their hotel.
Right. So that's why we're trying to.
Except Darren. Maybe we should get Darren in there so he can experience it.
He's like, I'll skip it.
This is a bizarre conversation because what we're trying to do is get the people who are sworn to preserve, protect, and defend the law to reasonably enforce the law and obey the law.
So who
How
is
crazy
okay?
is
No.
this?
So who is responsible in local government at the all politics is local. That's why I go to local for
Right.
fun. I go there. I can't get hurt too bad unless they decide that I'm only.
Over the years, as law enforcement and government became more predatory, it now is the presumption that you are an enemy combatant, and the duty of everybody in the court system is to see that you're put behind bars.
We saw that happen in the Judge Beach trial.
Oh yes,
Like
definitely.
you definitely.
So
You've never seen anything. I never saw anything like that. Railroading Debbie.
let's
So hopefully that helps, and I can't wait to you pick an unrelated
it's
city council.
we're 20
Somewhere. Go
minutes
20 miles away. Just go practice.
20 minutes till 9, so we need to wrap up this Declaration of Independence.
Okay.
And so let's keep it moving here so that we can finish the Declaration of Independence. Enemies in war and in peace, friends.
Right.
By the way, you should have a disclaimer that says this is for educational and amusement purposes only.
Well, whatever.
Right.
Anyways,
You're not one of those sovereigns.
enemies in war. Well, actually, according to Congress, I guess I am, because they said that in 1940 they said that all of us are sovereigns.
Well,
So
innocence is no
So-
part of prosecution.
and I've never in my life breached the peace, but the pigs breach the peace on a routine basis. So if they want to accuse me of being a terrorist, the terrorists are actually the ones in uniform.
So I quoted Thomas Jefferson last night and repeated twice the line.
Well, when the people fear the government fears the people.
No,
What was it?
there are two enemies of the people.
That's right.
So and it was fun watching the government in front of me how they
They
responded.
think they can do no wrong.
No,
Yeah.
that's
Two
not
enemies
true.
of the peoples, criminals and government.
No, that was not
And
there.
let's bind down the second with the
With the
chains of
chain
the
of the
Constitution so they don't become the legalized version of the first, and that's exactly what's happened.
True, but they.
Only took 200 years.
Why did I read them their oath? To remind them, for starters. Because then I discussed the fact that if there's a regulation that you're not sure if it's constitutional or not, you get to ask your municipal attorney and have, before you vote yes for accepting money from the county or accepting some regulation from the state, ask the city attorney for his decision. Is this constitutional? Because that's your oath. I was bringing them back to 1 Stat 1. And now it's going to start gnawing at them, the ones with the good conscience. And now that the people there was people in the gallery, and now they heard the same thing, and they're like, wait a minute, yeah, they do have an oath to support the Constitution. And then I asked them, how many constitutions do you think there are? And I said, there's at least 2. And I read, take for example, Senate document 116-3. I have it right here. And I read it, the Constitution of the United States. I said, and yet the House of Representatives, document number 110-50, Senate, House, both Congress, the Constitution of the United States of America. I said, that's at least 2. Why? And I didn't go into much more. The point is I'm raising doubt. So now they can go online, and if Glenn ever publishes something that has those same words, it'll come every time that question comes up, the AI will bring them to Glenn, and next thing you know, they can listen to this conversation, and we're starting to wake people up. And if and when we ever get a 3-minute speech written, okay, you don't know, you're not capable. It's like a 6-year-old firing a pistol. It'll still kill. So your words, Joe, and my help, we can put together a 3-minute speech that can go out. We'll start with 3 minutes because that's the minimum that they have to kind of allow anybody in America. And let's have some fun.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think you need to talk next time. You got started
Where?
Well, he's going to
City
talk on
council.
Tuesday, I
Yeah, I'm
thought.
talking about the city
To the
council.
city council?
Yeah.
He didn't
Okay.
say.
So,
So the point being, enemies in war and peace friends. Question for you. Do I make you become a friend? Or
No.
are they talking about true peace? What were the founding fathers? We hold them, meaning the brethren back from England, and the Parliament, as the rest of mankind. So we're holding them, the brethren in Parliament, and the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. What determines peace? Is it only absence of war? Are we at peace right now?
no, we're not.
No, according to the Lieber Code, we're not.
Okay, well, guess what? Glenn has established peace with Colleyville, hasn't he?
I think he's established an uncomfortable truce.
Yeah, I think it's more like an uncomfortable truce.
Okay.
I mean, they would love to throw his ass in jail.
Give him a reason.
Well, they have orders. They have
To
orders.
do what?
Yeah.
Do it or stay away.
Leave me alone.
Right. And
Well,
so,
Scared of you.
When,
They don't-
when he,
they don't want
when
to
he
see you.
threatened with them with war crimes, they accused him.
I
of war
accuse
crimes.
them of attempted
That helps a
murder.
lot.
and don't think that in your friends at Bedford or whatever, they also they dealt with an issue where the
You know,
mayor's
these are low-level scum, and basically it boils down to, including the judges at the lower level, it boils down to, is it too much trouble? Glenn Fern is more trouble than he's worth. He's like a fucking porcupine. Touch him and you're going to have trouble. That's all there is to it.
who orders the mayor? Who holds the power over the mayor for his
For
decisions?
for the county or the city?
The mayor of the city.
Who's over the mayor of the city?
Who holds the authority?
Over the mayor of the
What, the
city, I
voters?
would say as far as if he didn't follow the Constitution,
No. If the mayor wants something to happen in the city, he wants to have a certain
city council.
exactly the people, the representatives of the people. That's the point. There's more of them and there's one of him or her. There's more of them. And last night, them I can live with. I haven't met the chief of
Oh,
police.
really? What makes you say that?
Because it's okay when we talk to, because their response,
Okay.
number one. Number two, the response of the Holy Spirit in
Well,
me.
Did you have a sense that they were actually on your side?
They're in the side of truth.
Okay.
And you know how I know that?
We're trying to get
No
you
idea.
know.
Because I'm in touch with the Holy Spirit who confirmed what I'm saying, they're receiving, they're in touch with truth. They're hearing what I'm saying. Now, imagine out of the blue, here comes this maniac starting to talk about this out of the blue. Constitutional comments and Army Regulation 840-10. They didn't know what to expect. These two guys didn't show up, so I got the whole 30 minutes. It's never happened in my life. I get 3 minutes, maybe 5 twice a month.
You got the whole 30 minutes.
And I asked them, I said, is there any objection to me speaking for the whole 30 minutes? And the city council president stand-in, number one, he was the city councilman because the regular mayor was there. He looked around, waiting for objections, seeing none, go right ahead. I'm like, great. We, the people, have spoken. They were the representatives of the people. Imagine if they said no. That every other time, we've always given 30 minutes, and if there's no more speakers, we move on. So it was fun. It was actually, it was a breath of fresh
All right,
air.
so your mission really is to educate.
Right. He likes that. He likes to educate.
Well, because people have to then get it's
You
kind
don't
of
have to justify
a
yourself.
love
Us
for
or anybody else.
a love for learning.
Okay?
Learning what? Learning truth. So when we give them something worthwhile, how many of us have chased down a rabbit trail that ends up in a mouthful of gravel? It's no good.
I have been in front of 5 judges, and every one of them committed felony fraud and felony fraud upon their own court in my case.
Not,
I can't
He's trying
imagine
to
you expecting.
educate you on
I
a
can't
different
imagine
approach.
you expecting that I would be well disposed toward these people.
no. In fact, I told the judge who did what she did to me, I said, I hope I never see you again.
Really?
And I meant it. In the meantime, Glenn and I are going after her with the full faith and credit of the United States, and I think the U.S. Army at the end of the day. And why would the U.S. Army come to my rescue? Because of this.
He's using that one, the 1787.
This is the
real
one
one.
This is the one the judge put me in the mental institution, the Constitution of the United States of America, the corporate Constitution, and that's why when I demanded trial by jury, she had to say, I think I'm going to take you into a municipal court and I'll be the sole juror and trier of fact. Why did she do that? Because under the corporation, she could do it. But guess what I have the right to do? I have the right to then do an appeal, but I chose not to.
Do you have rights as a legal fiction?
No, that's why you have
That's
to go.
why he wants that
That's
Constitution.
why I demand. That's why I put on the record things that a non-legal fiction are entitled to.
This
But
is
I-
not difficult what he's doing. He's just trying to
Educate them.
You have to
educate him.
make-
That's the
You
Constitution
have
needs
to
to
make
be
a
used.
distinction between the corporate and the.
Yeah, there you go. It's not difficult.
No,
This
it
is like
doesn't.
you can
It's
probably
only
do it with
because
elementary school.
It was intended to deceive. In 1781, when they put in the new constitution.
That's what they did.
you mean
He's just trying to open
1870.
it up and educate
No,
people.
it wasn't. No, yes, it was intended to deceive, but there's people who knew exactly. Actually, you're right. And you know what? The 14th Amendment, Glenn's information that he has, that Diet versus Turner.
Yeah.
Do you know I studied why did 2 or 3 or more states, after they approved the 14th Amendment, recalled everybody to the legislature and said, excuse us, we have to change our vote on the 14th Amendment?
I have no idea.
Because they figured out what the traps were. Somebody let the cat out of the bag, and the good men of New Jersey and Oregon, a couple others, all said, we're not doing it. They reversed their vote. And you know what the Secretary of State did?
Probably said you can't reverse your vote.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a political issue.
Yeah, right.
But guess what? When I learned all that, I'm like, okay, all I need to do is not be a 14th Amendment citizen, and they can no longer, without their their risk, that man or woman doing it to me. But see, they were abusing a legal fiction. They were convicting a legal fiction that you happen to be tethered to, not knowing how to get away from. And that's okay because we were all there. So now we're learning how to slowly but surely take the hooks out of our skin so that when they pull on it, there's nothing there. We've snipped the line. We instead of the porpoise drowning because they're in the that big thick rayon net where a guy has to come and snip them out, and that's what we're doing. That's what you guys are trying to do for all these people that are in
Right.
jail. So as soon as we get the right angle and can start saying, "Let's snip, baby, bring in another one."
That's
Next
all he's
thing-
trying to do.
that's
He's
all
trying
he's-
to educate, and we're his audience because we want to find a way to get people treated fairly, and we're hoping something will work.
Well, when I found out, when I was in the joint, I found out that 61% of the people in there, according to the Innocence Projects, are stone cold innocent. I was one of them.
I was shocked. 5%, 10%.
Well,
but
see, that was
60%?
your mistake. You didn't realize that you were at war when you were at war,
Yep.
Right.
and
was
so
deceived.
it's out of your. They deceived you.
Yeah.
It was out of your ignorance, and the root word of the word ignorance is ignore.
Well, the flaw in the
But
concept.
you did the right stuff. That's why you're out of there now.
Yeah.
When you filed those 14
14.
challenges to jurisdiction,
Yep.
because then your lawyer that you hired that took all your silver was able to bring up that issue with the Court of Criminal Appeals and get all of that vacated.
Ultimately,
Yeah, and now it's become a landmark decision.
yeah.
But still, the bottom line is that
Well,
you were clueless about what was really going on.
all right. So I ask you, if eternal vigilance is the cost of liberty, so what advantage is there a Constitution if you have to spend all of your time and effort
You don't. You just think it's
eternally vigilant against your own public servants who are apparently inclined to turn against you if the Chinese show up with a couple of dollars?
Freedom's not free. Freedom's not free.
I
You
have
gotta
been
know it.
I've been
You gotta fight for
explaining
everything.
I've been explaining the reason for the passport in city council, and they get it. The public gets it, and they don't like it. Every time I whip out my passport, and I explain, everyone's arrested in maritime jurisdiction. I explain the gold fringe flag, which is no longer here. They finally kicked it out last night. I said, as far as I know, the town I was in is the only municipal council in this nation that has the gold fringe flag that is in this corner in your council chambers. It's unconstitutional. I just told you have an oath to the Constitution. You've got an unconstitutional flag, and I asked them, why don't you turn next time? It might have been exactly this way. The point is, why don't you turn and pledge allegiance to the flag outside on the flagpole? That's the flag of the words that came out of your mouth. The words that came out of your mouth. So I used your neurolinguistic programming intelligence.
Easy for you to say.
So, all right, Glenn, finish up. We therefore.
So we're actually going to go on to this?
Yeah.
We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America and General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, which means righteousness, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and then all political connection. That's interesting, says political connection. You know, the stuff that's going on. Remember, you said that the 14th Amendment was political, okay? And all the stuff that's happened to Trump was political, okay?
Yeah.
Political means it's not lawful, it's political. And there's court cases that actually say that the judicial branch has to follow the political department. The judicial department has to follow the political department.
Well, since it's a part of the executive branch, of course they have to.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Under the corporate constitution.
That's because there's really no separation of powers.
Unless we run into a guy with a passport.
So, anyways, and all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Right. And if I had time, and I have actually read the Constitution into the public record, but if all I needed was a couple extra people, and we could have chewed up the whole 20, 30 minutes, and just all they had to do was listen to whatever we say, until somebody else decides to come in and take our space. But until they do, and because there's not that much interest out there, because everyone surrendered to the inevitability of what we think is the truth, which it's not, and we can prove it. Now, if and when we all get, for fun, start to get the cities damaged economically for what they've done, or in your case, the state or the county, that, then they, of course, they want you to keep quiet. If they offer me $30 million right now, no, it's not about the money only. That's sure part of it.
You're a very dangerous man, because to you, it's not about the money.
And guess what? Read that, please. This is my favorite part.
Our lives, our fortune, and our sacred
That
honor.
whole last,
Yeah.
yes. And that's what they did.
Yeah.
So that's why you guys do what you do for your friends, who you half of them, I don't know how well you know them. It doesn't matter. It's we the people. And for the support of this declaration, the Declaration of Independence, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge. How many honorable men would be able to do that?
To each other.
Exactly. To each other. To each other.
Yeah.
Men, not states, men.
Americans.
And that's what Charlie said. He said that everybody that fought in the Revolutionary War was a volunteer. That's why it worked.
How interesting.
Yeah, it's never been done that he knew of before. And the Holy
It really
Spirit said-
was we the people.
Exactly. And who didn't want to be with you didn't have to be. You could be with the Tories. And guess what? At the end of the day, the Indians in New Jersey lost their land because they said, we bet with Great Britain.
Really.
To this day, they walk around like their heads down. They have no pride because they lost. They choose the wrong side. William Penn lost most of his fortune because he said, no, I'm not helping you. His family said, he was dead, but his family, you're not.
He lost Penn's Woods. His
Well,
family held him.
Most of his
It
fortune.
was we don't know exactly how much, but because I think, Glenn, what happened was, how the false Texians are trying to steal Texas, the land,
Yeah.
and subrogate it, hypothecate it.
Yeah.
The guys in Pennsylvania said, all right, Penn, we want you to help us. He said, no. He said, all right, we'll just go ahead and pledge it to the French anyway. And the French said, okay, great.
We'll
We
take
think
the pledge.
we'll take the pledge. We'll give you 5 million livres or whatever it was.
Right.
1778.
So they had a claim, legitimate or otherwise. They had a claim.
And do you know who to this day runs the
Post office.
yes,
I've heard this.
in Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Philadelphia, actually. Only Philadelphia. Just Philadelphia. What country to this day is in charge of the post office?
I can't.
France.
It's France.
How could that possibly?
Because the post office is where you make war. Everything happens at the post office. It's the post. It's the military post. And I think this is why I can't get my certificate of live birth, because somehow I'm connected. Everyone born on Pennsylvania is connected to this deal that created this nation, because Pennsylvania, out of all the colonies, the only land that was pledged was Pennsylvania.
Does France, the government of France, acknowledge this situation?
It's proof that they acknowledge what about the post office?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do they speak French in the post office or
I
no?
don't know.
Did you know that the headquarters of the United States Postal Service is located on L'Enfant Square
No.
in
Yeah.
Washington, D.C.?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah,
The French.
it's a French street.
You're living in
L'Enfant, the
The
infant.
infant, yeah.
L'Enfant Square.
Yeah. You're living in history.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So everything tracks back. Everything tracks back. So the good news is, okay, if it does, that means if I go far enough back, I'm going to find what I'm looking for if it's really there. So I can't get discouraged. I do at times, but I try not to, because I just take a deep breath and say, you know what? I'm going to get as far as I can, and then after I'm dead, they'll take me out of the tunnel, and the next guy will come and dig.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, well, I guess that's about it. I
Why
can
don't
think
you
we
tell
can.
them about today's date? This concludes our meeting.
This concludes our meeting. Today is the 12th of March, and we're not going to have one next week because I'm going to be in Phoenix, and the next one will be in 2 weeks. And same time, same place, same